Really dislike Jake Paul. Now, I don't dislike him. I understand him. I want to make something clear. I would still kick the living fuck out of Jake.
Andrew Tate just obliterated Jake Paul on live TV in the most humiliating way possible. Honestly, what else can we expect from Jake? The guy has a talent for exceeding even the lowest expectations. First, he chickened out of Andrew Tate's $3 million fight proposal, then had the audacity to drag Mike Tyson into a pathetic scripted fight. Jake knew Tyson wasn't in his prime, but that didn't stop him from exploiting the legend for views and a payday.
Because he's allowed himself to become the biggest clown on the internet, and now he's famous, right? Because he's an idiot, but he has a bunch of money, so he gets to...
And now, Jake's playing his next card, trying to provoke Andrew Tate into fighting him, fully aware he'll never step in the ring himself. Why? Because Jake knows he'd lose, and he's banking on Tate rejecting the offer just to spin the narrative and feed his ego. But Andrew Tate isn't falling for it. Instead, he publicly ripped Jake apart, exposing every inch of his fraudulence on live television.
You only want to lose to them so you can say, well, I lost to Conor McGregor. Why don't you lose to an old man who's retired? I live in the real world, Jake. There's a whole bunch of fighters out here who live in the real world. Men who are dangerous and dedicated.
But Andrew Tate's response? He flipped the script entirely. Instead of rejecting the fight, he called Jake's bluff and accepted the challenge. And what did Jake do? He vanished, completely ghosted.
but I would whoop his ass. But he wouldn't take a fight against me, because when he loses, I'm not nearly on his level of fame, right? So like, he lost to who? Whereas if he loses to Conor McGregor, it's no big deal. Well, he lost to Conor McGregor, who cares, right? That's what it's about.
Jake's entire trick relied on Tate refusing so he could spin some story about being the fearless warrior no one dares to face. But now, with Andrew ready to throw down, Jake is in full panic mode. He didn't expect this, and now he's backed into a corner with nowhere to run. The so-called fearless Jake Paul is suddenly silent, proving once again he's all talk and no action.
I'm not some washed-up UFC fighter. I'm not smaller than him. I would beat the living shit out of him, and if he wants to fight, I'll fight him any day of the week, and I'll fucking wreck him, and he knows.
Tate didn't just challenge him to a fight. He delivered a reality check so brutal, you'd think it came with a medical disclaimer. He flat-out called Jake's career a joke and accused him of turning boxing into a TikTok-friendly embarrassment. Hard to argue with that when Jake's idea of competition includes a 58-year-old Mike Tyson. Speaking of Tyson, let's talk about Jake dragging this absolute legend into his nonsense. Mike Tyson, the man, the myth, the heavyweight icon, reduced to a content gimmick because Jake wanted to play tough. Andrew Tate summed it up perfectly. It wasn't boxing, it was elder abuse. Jake didn't see Tyson as a revered figure who changed the sport. No, he saw a shortcut, a way to grab headlines without actually risking anything. And the worst part? He thought people wouldn't notice.
However, I do understand what he's doing. I understand that he is very, very smart, even with his marketing angle. I'm just a YouTuber. You're not just a YouTuber. You're a full-grown man with the best coaches in the world who's dedicated his life to learning how to box for years. You know how to box. You're not a complete amateur. You know how to box very well. 3, 4, 5 years of training combat sports. You can box. The guy's not a jackass.
But Jake's greatest masterpiece? His laughable fight history. It's like opening a box of fireworks only to find sparklers. He's fought retired MMA fighters who didn't even specialize in striking. Ben Askren, a wrestling guy with the speed of a snail. Tyron Woodley, a shadow of his former self. Nate Robinson, a basketball player who looked like he'd never thrown a punch in his life. Jake's entire career is a highlight reel of low-risk, high-reward stunts designed to fool casual fans into thinking he's the next big thing. Andrew Tate tore through that facade like it was a wet paper towel. Jake, he said, if you trained half as much as you cherry-pick opponents, maybe you'd actually earn some respect.
He is not just a YouTuber. He is a young man training with Canelo and Ryan Garcia.
When I made the video, I really disliked Jake Paul. Now, I don't dislike him, I understand.
And then there's the $3 million challenge. This wasn't a gimmick or some staged spectacle. It was a real offer. Winner takes all, no excuses. Tate didn't care about the money. He wanted to expose Jake for what he truly is. And what did Jake do? He ran. Not walked, not jogged, ran. Because here's the thing. Jake Paul thrives in controlled environments. His fights are choreographed to protect his ego and keep his narrative intact. He's the king of playing it safe while pretending he's risking it all. But a fight with Andrew Tate? That's not part of the script. That's a gamble he can't afford because it threatens to blow up his entire brand.
$3 million. You put three, I put three. Winner takes all. You know my name, Andrew Tate. I will fight you any day, anytime. Let's fucking go. If I were to fight Jake Paul, I would take it completely seriously like a real fight, and I'd whoop his ass. I'd beat him. Jake. Everyone thinks he's just so new.
Jake's rejection of Tate's challenge isn't just a strategic dodge. It's a confession. A confession that all the bravado and trash talk is just that, talk. The guy who loves calling himself a disruptor and a game changer suddenly becomes radio silent when faced with an actual threat. And let's not forget his loss to Tommy Fury, which was already the beginning of his downfall. Fighting Tate would have been the final nail in the coffin, and Jake knew it. But here's the thing. Even without the fight, Andrew Tate's public takedown of Jake Paul was enough to do damage. It wasn't just a roast, it was a full-on humiliation, a masterclass in exposing a fraud. Jake's TikTok followers and YouTube fans might still buy into his act, but the rest of the world sees through it now. Tate reminded everyone what boxing is really about: respect, skill, and authenticity. Jake Paul? He's just a loudmouth who got lucky riding the algorithm. Andrew Tate's psychological warfare against Jake Paul was nothing short of a masterclass in humiliation. Tate didn't just call Jake a clown, he dismantled his entire existence like a surgeon with a scalpel. The man accused Jake of being nothing more than a kid playing dress-up in a sport he doesn't even respect. And let's face it, Jake's whole career is less about boxing and more about racking up TikTok likes. Tate's savage line, "Jake, your legacy isn't built on fights, it's built on TikTok captions," was so precise, Jake probably needed an ice pack for his ego. This wasn't just trash talk. It was psychological destruction. And Jake's paper-thin self-image started cracking right in front of our eyes. Jake Paul thrives on projecting this larger-than-life confidence, but Tate's relentless verbal uppercuts turned that illusion into a crumbling facade. Social media had a field day, exploding with memes and jokes that hit harder than any punch Jake's ever thrown. Platforms like Twitter and Instagram were plastered with hashtags like Jake Paul exposed and Tate vs Jake, with fans gleefully roasting Jake for dodging Tate's $3 million winner-takes-all challenge. The irony? Jake, the self-proclaimed fearless fighter, was running faster than his hype train. His carefully crafted persona, a fearless disruptor in the boxing world, was suddenly looking as stable as one of his cringy post-fight celebrations. Let's not pretend this was just another day online. The backlash was brutal. Fans, haters, and everyone in between joined the pile-on. Jake, who supposedly earned over $40 million from his boxing career, found himself in a position no amount of money could fix. Memes labeled him as a fraud, a runner, and, let's be honest, just scared. Even his most loyal fans started second-guessing their allegiance. Andrew Tate hit the nail on the head when he said, "Jake, even your fans know you cherry-pick fights to protect your brand." And the worst part? He's absolutely right. Jake's avoidance of Tate wasn't just a strategic move. It was a neon sign screaming fear. Meanwhile, let's talk about Andrew Tate, the guy who walked away from this whole mess without breaking a sweat. Tate didn't need to step into a ring to expose Jake. By simply issuing the challenge and watching Jake fumble, Tate cemented his dominance. Fans now see him as the real deal, a fighter who doesn't need gimmicks or hand-picked opponents to prove his worth. This wasn't just a win for Tate, it was a masterstroke. He came out looking like the beacon of authenticity in a sport increasingly plagued by YouTubers and Instagram influencers pretending to be athletes.
Two brothers, one cage. Jake Logan, you Tristan. Who comes out alive?
You know what? I'm trying so hard to not start internet beefs. I'm really trying not to.
You could say Jake and Logan, man.
Bro,
don't worry about it.
No, I can't lie. Bro, I'm going through life. I'm trying to live peaceful now. I've got Fed agents in my house. Matrix is out.
But for Jake, this was a PR catastrophe. His entire brand is built on the idea that he's fearless and willing to fight anyone. Rejecting Tate's challenge blew a massive hole in that narrative. It's not just about dodging one fight. It's about what that dodge represents. A fight with Tate wasn't just a risky move. It was a direct threat to the entire illusion Jake has spent years crafting. And let's not forget, his loss to Tommy Fury already exposed some cracks in his armor. Stepping into the ring with Tate would have been the final blow, and Jake knew it. Andrew Tate's mic drop moment was the perfect cherry on top of this roast fest. Jake, you don't need boxing gloves. You need to stay on YouTube where losing isn't as painful. Brutal, accurate, and so cutting it could have doubled as a knife. Jake's rejection wasn't just about avoiding a fight. It was an unspoken confession. Deep down, Jake knows he's out of his league. Tate didn't need to prove anything. His legacy is already solid. But Jake, he needed this fight to keep the illusion alive. And now, that illusion is shattered. The fallout from this debacle is something Jake might never recover from. His road to redemption isn't just uphill, it's practically vertical. It's no longer enough to just hype his next fight. He'll have to convince a skeptical audience that he's more than a YouTuber with boxing gloves. And let's be real, that's a tall order when even your die-hard fans are questioning your credibility.